Coming to you from the campus of Utah Tech University in St. George, Utah, this is 70 is the New 50, a podcast on how to be vigorously alive as we age. Creator Jan Graham Hunt is joined by her co-host Wendy King. And now, 70 is the New 50.
Welcome to 70 is the New 50. Our topic for this episode, the joy of cooking and the experience and maybe the joy of eating. I'm Wendy King, your host today. I'm an author, artist, and competitive power walker. I serve as a council member for the Institute for Continued Learning here at Utah Tech, and I am a proud grandmother. The setting for our recording is the podcast room run by Sean Denovan on the Utah Tech University campus in gorgeous St. George, Utah, the gateway to Zion National Park and other unique wonders of the West. Our guests today are experts on the joys of cooking, Kim Blackman and Judy Blackman. Kim and Judy host the ICL course, Famous Ethnic Chefs of St. George, and are launching a new venture that features light hikes, stunning sights, and savory bites, the St. George Tour Company. Welcome, Kim and Judy.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, so glad to have you here. Hey, Kim, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about your background and how you came to love all the experiences surrounding cooking.
Well, I guess I grew up in New York City, and I grew up in what I call a close extended family. So I spent a fair amount of time, I've spent a lot of time, obviously, with my parents, also with my aunt and uncle, who owned a very successful and much-loved chain of restaurants in metropolitan New York, and I worked off and on for many years in those restaurants, in between schooling, and also went to many famous and less famous restaurants in Manhattan and street festivals, and learned from them the ins and outs of food, and both shopping for food, eating food. We just talked food incessantly in my family. And my mom, I just want to say, who's an artist, was very creative in making food. You know, most artists don't want to do anything over. They want to make their creation and then move to the next one. So I kid around, if my mom made something we all loved, we knew we'd never see that again.
Oh, goodness. Oh, what a story. That's great. And Judy, I know you're a former English teacher, but what has led you to share what you enjoy about cooking with others?
Well, I love to eat. I mean, I suppose there are some people who don't, but I love to eat and love preparing food that other people will enjoy. So my family, my kids, my husband, and I didn't learn that much at home. My mom was a very good cook for what she knew, but she never explored beyond her knowledge that she learned from her grandmother. So when I when I started living with roommates, then I started cooking and thinking about different things I'd like to try that I'd never had before.
That's great. You must have a great sense of curiosity.
Yeah, I guess I do.
Oh, that's awesome. It's been noted that one of the core differences in the human species is our enjoyment of food. Michael Pollan's Netflix series, Cooked, wisely stated that the art of cooking is the very foundation that makes us human. Do you agree with that, Kim? And do you have maybe some tips that you'd like to share on the joy of cooking and what makes it joyful?
Sure do. I do, actually, Wendy. And I think it's very important. State of mind is what makes it joyful. If it's stressful, it's not joyful. So what we have put together is 10 tips that we live by, really, to make it a fun experience, whether we're just cooking at home for ourselves or we're cooking for a group of people.
Great.
I want to mention that cooking is like a nature walk in the kitchen. That's what I call it, because it's just like, you know how important a nature walk is for longevity. And, you know, studies have shown, including a recent one from Cambridge University, that people who cook at home have a 40% more likelihood of living longer than those people who don't traditionally cook at home. Wow. So it benefits you that way, just like a nature walk. You get absorbed in it. You're surrounded by nature's bounty. And if you do it right, you feel great after you finish. So here's what we came up with to make it a joy and make you feel great, both while you're doing it and after. First of all, it starts with the shopping experience. And I'm going to name drop here, but any upscale market would do. But we love to go to Harmon's to start off making whatever we're going to make, with rare exceptions. Because the atmosphere, you almost feel like you're in an art gallery, and people are knowledgeable and can help you, and it's very appealing and comfortable to be there. Also, we love going to farmers markets, and basically for similar reasons. It's a great atmosphere, outdoor shopping, and you can speak to the very people. You can ask them, is this onion going to be a good onion for what I want to do? Or, so we recommend going to farmers markets. Judy?
One thing I want to say is that, quoting from Michael Pollan as you did, he said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I think that's a good motto to go by.
That's great. Good.
Okay, another thing that's important is mise en place. That's a French term meaning have everything ready to go. In other words, have all your ingredients out and pre-measured, have all the tools you will need pre-measured, ready and handy. So you don't have to start looking for things in the middle of cooking, which I've done and is not a good thing to do. It's much better and easier and more enjoyable when you cook this way.
And virtually all of the chefs that we've had on our YouTube show do mise en place before they get going.
Good.
So it's pretty universal in the professional world. Number 3 tip to make it a joy, for me anyway, is to have a glass of wine handy. If you don't drink wine, a glass of water would be terrific too. Just something that's a little bit of a diversion and makes you comfortable while you do the cooking.
Yeah, maybe water with a little lemon, right? Whatever.
That would be perfect.
Or mint.
Mint. Ooh, I like that.
Or bubble water. They have a lot of flavored bubble waters now that are delicious and have no calories.
Well, the next tip is to leave plenty of time. So you're not rushing and making mistakes. Read that recipe very carefully if you're using one, and then read it again. And don't rush.
That's certainly true. And then how about tasting as you go?
Yes, definitely. You're the one you want to please, and the people you are trying to cook for also usually have similar taste. So don't be afraid to taste as you go. Put in whatever herbs, spices you think will make it better.
Yeah.
You're in charge. You're the cook.
You don't want to be a slave to whatever recipe you're working with, because if you are, when you come out to the end and if something's not right, it's too late to make the correction, usually.
I love that. A little tasting spoon.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the 6th one we've come up with is to get the best tools. And this is everything from knives, for safety, definitely knives, cutting boards, measuring cups. These are things you're going to use over and over and over again. And every time you use it, it's going to be a frustration or a joy.
So, pots and pans are also very important, because that's where you're going to be doing the cooking. And once you invest in good ones, they should last a lifetime. The other thing I wanted to mention was share the task. Let everyone do something if necessary, because that way it becomes more of a community activity and your guests feel part of the joy of cooking.
You make it a social event that way. And we all know that long life is helped by being as social as we can be and sharing things. Why don't you talk about that one, Judy?
Well, one thing I wanted to say is many recipes, like I use the New York Times a lot, their cooking app. And one of the best things about it is looking at the comments that other people make who've made the recipe. And it's usually so helpful, because sometimes the recipe isn't perfect. So they'll give you some ideas of how to moderate it, how to change it, how to improve it. And I love those tips. They've really made cooking a lot better and better food for me.
And one of our favorite magazines is Cooks Illustrated.
Okay.
Because they go through a recipe and they will do the same recipe over and over again and try, let's say, putting the onions in and sauteing. Do it again, the onions not sauteing, and so on. And so they come up with the best results. They also have a wonderful section on tools, like we just mentioned. You can get a summary right there. They test many, many, many tools. So we really enjoy, both of us enjoy getting that and reading through it.
Great. Any last tips you have here?
We have 2 more for you.
Great.
Go ahead, Judy. And
Well,
for everybody.
share the tasks. I think I already said that, didn't I?
Yes.
Put cooking in perspective. Okay, if something doesn't come out perfectly or just the way you hoped it would, okay, you'll have another few thousand meals to cook.
Yeah.
So just enjoy what you get and don't beat yourself up about it. That's how you learn.
Good.
And then if there are children around, if you have children or grandchildren around, by all means, make sure you that's the most important thing. Get them involved. My parents, my aunt and uncle, my grandmother, I was involved up to my elbows. And I learned a lot. It was a real great bonding experience, and we could all share the joy, not only of cooking, but of the results. And the last thing of this is to be sure and pat yourself on the back when
Here we
you're
go.
done.
Pat, pat, pat. A little clap there,
Absolutely. Just nobody's going to notice the small little mistakes that you may have made except you. And you don't need to share those.
Another thing I want to say is that I'm very proud of my sons because they're both excellent cooks, probably better than I am. My older son loves baking. He bakes all kinds of bread. When I made my first sourdough bread the other day, I asked him if he'd ever done that. And he said, "Are you kidding? I do it all the time."
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, yeah, that was nice to hear.
Pass it on. Pass it on. I love that. So, Kim, can you just share how you decided to teach the course on the ethnic chefs of St. George? And do you think it bridges cultures?
Well, the second part of your question is easier for me to answer than the first. The answer is absolutely. It's wonderful. And the people who take our course seem to love it. The course gets, quote unquote, sold out within minutes of registration opening up. And it's like a family with our studio audience. And I think it's the chefs seem to love it too. They really get involved, and we have different ethnic chefs. So both our studio audience and YouTube audience get to learn a lot because the concept of that course was not just to learn how to cook something, but it was basically to learn the history of that item. When we do this, we go back and we do research on where it comes from. I put up maps of the locale, and we tell the story about its history, and each of our chefs, we meet with them several times to get their background, both in terms of learning about how they got into cooking, as well as where they came from and why they came to St. George. So there's a lot we share besides just the food. And that allows people, when they have somebody over for dinner or a dinner party, to not just make something special, but also to be able to explain to them where this food comes from and what they learned from the chef.
We've been approached by many people when out and about thanking us for the class and telling us how much they love it, which has always been a surprise to me, but it's nice to hear. One woman actually told me that it brought a lot of diversity into her life, which was interesting.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and especially we live in a smaller community, but for you to have found that here in St. George lets me know that there probably any community, if you do a little research, you can find different places that have different ethnic foods. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you all for finding that for all of us here in St. George. So, but let's speak about cooking. Have either of you or cooking together had a disastrous cooking experience that turned into maybe a great family tale?
I never have. So I'm going to let Judy tackle this question.
I love it.
I'm sure there are many, but the only one I can remember now, because I've been doing this for a really long time, was about 2 years ago. We were visiting our son in San Francisco. He lives in an old brownstone, very charming, but the kitchen is ancient. and the stove actually doesn't work, the oven part. So he bought something on the counter to replace it. And when I tried to put the dish that I had prepared into this oven, it didn't fit.
Oh, man.
So that was the end of that. But I guess you should plan these things beforehand and make sure everything is going to fit before you try to do it.
Well, I was sharing with you earlier, I had a little experience where I was responsible for my very first family Thanksgiving in my 20s, and I got that turkey and I went to put it in the oven, same kind of story, and it didn't fit. So we had to get a chair and try to prop the door closed by attaching it to the handle, and I got a rope and tied it
really? Wow.
around the
Did it work?
It did. It took a couple hours longer than normal, but we got the oven hot enough. But the best part of it is everyone in my family remembers that story. Remember that Wendy's first Thanksgiving?
Well, I want to say one thing about that. When I was a kid, and I told you my mom was very creative. And so one year she made a chocolate cake, and it was very stringy. We couldn't figure it out. And she had actually put sauerkraut instead of sour cream.
There we go. How did it taste?
We didn't eat it.
Oh, but see, everybody remembers that story. That's wonderful. The University of Michigan conducted a national poll on healthy aging and cites cognitive, social, and emotional benefits of cooking. One observation is that eating with others is associated with a healthier diet. Judy, do you have any thoughts on that, comments on that?
Well, definitely. I think we all know that community, a sense of community and spending time with other people is a longevity factor. And I'm sure eating with other people would be the same because it's more enjoyable. You can talk, you can chat, you can discuss the food or anything else that's on your mind. So it takes away the loneliness of being older and alone if you're sharing with other people.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. Kim, cooking can stimulate sight, sound, smell, taste, and hearing, which really, that stimulation is important for seniors. When you're cooking, what sense stands out to you? Anything that really makes a difference?
Well, I sort of make it a challenge for myself, but that's my personality. So I like to juggle things. I like to get everything going and figure out the most efficient way to do anything. So I like to make one trip we have like a little, we have a pantry that doubles as a small appliance department.
That's great.
It
Yeah.
is.
So I like to make sure that, I don't mean really make sure, but I like the idea that when I go into that little room, I have with me whatever I need to get everything going at the same time. And I like to do the same thing with the refrigerator, and I like to get everything cooking. One of the biggest challenges of cooking is having, and maybe even the biggest for us, I think you'd agree with this, Judy, is making everything done at the same time.
Right.
This is a challenge. If you work in a professional restaurant or professional setting, you learn through repetition and getting recipes when to start things and exactly what heat. But at home, it's a little harder to do that. So you have to juggle that.
It's actually been a little more difficult lately because our what's it called? The microwave oven is not working. And it's been like over a week, and we have to wait another week till they get the parts. And our air fryer, which we use a lot, was recalled.
Oh, my goodness.
And they haven't sent us a new one yet. So it's been more difficult, but I don't find it that big a challenge to get things ready at the same time. But to answer your question, I think the smell of food is really important to me, the way it smells. The aroma makes your appetite grow, and, of course, tasting it.
I just love when you walk into a room and you can, those smells just attack you, and it's just wonderful. So that's great. Kim, can you tell us a little bit more now about your next venture, which is the St. George Tour Company? What are you all going to try to do? And tell us a little bit about it.
I think I like to think our tagline says it almost all, and that is that it's light hikes, stunning sights, and savory bites. So this particular tour, the seed for this whole company and my concept for it really started in the Bronx in the 7th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, it did. It shows you the effect the teachers have on students because when I was in the 7th grade, my history teacher came back in the fall, showed us a slideshow. You remember slideshows.
Right.
And
they call them PowerPoints now.
Right.
And he showed us a slideshow of his family's trip around the United States that summer. And I, having grown up in the Bronx and living in New York, the blue skies and the red rocks and the whole size of everything out west that I saw in his slides, I just, at that point, knew that's where I wanted to be. And my journey there took me from the Bronx to Buffalo, New York, which is where I went to undergraduate school, and then to Miami, where Judy and I raised a family for 20 years. We were in Miami. I like to say we have 20 years in New York, 20 years in Miami, 20 years in L.A., and now we're here in St. George.
And then you're going to do this tour company. This is a wild idea.
Well, when I was in law school, even when I was in law school, I kid around sometimes when other kids in younger ages wanted to be firemen and policemen, I wanted to be a concierge.
Oh.
And in law school, while people were studying corporate law, I was planning a tour of Africa. This goes back many years. And Judy and I together, after we were married, we actually worked as tour leaders, taking teenagers around the United States to Europe and Hawaii for a couple of years, while Judy was a teacher at that point. And so travel was always totally in my blood. And I ended up having a company which took me to China. I've spent over a year in China, and when I was there, I very often would help the concierge, help the people who were English-speaking find out where to go in Hong Kong or Shanghai, and I loved that. Right. And so this is a culmination of that, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not designed or directed to folks who want to do, bungee jumping or rock climbing or ATVing. It's designed for folks who want to come and get a taste of our fabulous hikes and trails without too much of a burden, and also get a taste of our fabulous food. And that's where food comes in again. In our family, whenever we go and travel, we always knew where the next meal was before we set out on an activity.
That's great. So at this point, if people want to learn more about the tour company, where do they go? What do they do?
Well, we're just launching in about a week. We have a website up, and that's stgeorgetourcompany.com.
Great.
And they'll be able to find us there. We have brochures and cards about to go out. I want to quickly mention we'll also be taking folks who do not have transportation, who are tourists or older and don't want to travel or drive at night. That we'll be taking them out for a wonderful dinner and a show at either Tuacahn or the Performing Arts Center at Kayenta.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're sharing our community with others. That's so important.
We love doing that.
Well, that's great. Good. Well, let's take just a minute and talk one last thing. If you had to cook one meal, your last meal, Judy, what would it be?
Goodness. And what comes to my mind is a brisket. I don't know why, but it's very traditional in our family, and it's done on holidays. So that's what comes to mind: brisket with potatoes and carrots.
Oh, that's great.
And we don't even eat that much meat, but
oh, that's a fun thing to think about. How about you, Kim?
I was thinking as you were asking that question, and Judy was answering, this sounds totally not sophisticated, but it would be pizza.
Oh, I love that.
It's really hard to make a great pizza and to find a great pizza. So, yeah, that's what
wonderful. Well, brisket and pizza, and I'm going to follow it with carrot cake. How's that?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you both, Judy and Kim, for being here today. You've been wonderful guests. And we're going to just, think about food and enjoy it and enjoy community. with all of us here in St. George and being part of ICL and taking courses. So stay curious, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on 70 is the New 50. Don't miss future episodes for inspiring and eye-opening discussions about living a fully engaged life as we age. We'll see you next time on 70 is the New 50.